Sometimes miracles come softly. A loyal dog that refuses to leave, a stranger who chooses courage, a child who keeps fighting in silence. These moments are God's gentle way of reminding us that light still rises in the darkest places. As you return to your own journey, remember this: grace finds us when hope feels thin. If this story touched your heart, share it, leave a comment, and subscribe for more true moments of courage and quiet miracles. May God bless you and keep peace in your home until we meet again. The funeral should have been quiet, soft. A final whisper of farewell for a 5-year-old girl whose name seemed too light, too gentle to carry into death. Ava Rose Bennett. But the moment Rowan Maddox stepped beneath the archway of Willow Creek Chapel, he sensed it. The wrong kind of silence. Heavy, watching. The kind that reminded him of desert nights in Afghanistan when the world held its breath before an ambush. Rowan paused at the entrance. At 38, the former Marine still carried himself like a man built from discipline and storms. His tall, muscular frame moved with a quiet alertness, every step measured. His storm-gray blue eyes scanned the room the way they once scanned ridgelines, studying shadows for hidden threats. His short, dark brown hair carried a streak of silver at the temples, earned, not aged. And the worn Marpat jacket he wore, faded and frayed in places, brushed softly against his sides as he walked. He rarely took it off. Some ghosts stayed close. Beside him walked Ridge. The 4-year-old German shepherd moved with a slow, heavy gait, his sable black and gray coat catching the warm glow of stained glass overhead. On his chest, the bright off-center patch shaped like a broken arrow gleamed like a wound of light. His harness, black, marked K9, Ridge, fit snugly across strong shoulders that had once run through gunfire, and lately had carried the weight of something far heavier. Grief. Ava had been Ridge's brightest star. The weight of loss. Rowan walked deeper into the chapel. The air smelled of roses, candle wax, and heartbreak. Near the front stood Hannah Bennett, Ava's mother, only 32, but grief clung to her like years. Her slender frame shook beneath a beige wool coat. Her blue-gray eyes were swollen and rimmed with exhaustion, her hands pressed to her mouth to hold back sobs that threatened to break her body apart. Behind her stood Luke Bennett, Ava's father, a 35-year-old woodworker with strong hands and a rugged jaw that usually carried an easy smile. Today, that smile was gone. His plaid shirt hung wrinkled as though it was thrown on without thought. He looked hollowed out, like grief had scooped portions of him away. Rowan's chest tightened. Ava had been a small miracle in his quiet life. A tiny voice calling, "Rowan," from across the fence. A pair of dimpled hands feeding Ridge crumbs of cookies. A child who softened both man and dog without even trying. He approached slowly, and that was when Ridge froze. The moment everything changed. It began with a twitch of Ridge's ears. Sharp, alert. His posture stiffened. His head lifted slightly, nostrils flaring as though he caught a scent that should not have existed here. Rowan felt Ridge shift before he understood it. "Ridge?" he whispered. But the dog was already moving, not running, not rushing. Purposeful, direct, absolute. Gasps rose among the mourners as the German shepherd walked, straight down the aisle, past the rows of grieving neighbors, past the trembling shoulders of Ava's parents, and up the 2 steps of the altar. And then he jumped. With a startling, fluid motion, Ridge leapt into the small white coffin and curled his entire body around Ava's still form. His head rested on her chest, as though listening for the faint drum of life that would never return. His tail tucked close. His breath trembled in his ribs. Someone cried out, "Oh my God." Rowan's heart constricted. He hurried forward, boots striking the wooden floor. But then Ridge growled. Not at the mourners, not at the priest, not even at Rowan. Just a warning, a tremor of sound saying, "Don't touch her." "Ridge," Rowan whispered, trying to steady his voice. "Buddy, it's all right." It wasn't. Ridge nudged Ava's hand with heartbreaking gentleness, as if reminding her of the afternoons she tied ribbons around his harness. His whimper echoed through the chapel, raw enough to make grown men turn away. And then he lifted his head sharply, eyes locking onto someone across the room. Rowan followed the line of Ridge's stare, and the world seemed to stop. Ridge's gaze was sharp, narrowed, trembling with recognition. The German shepherd stared not at the coffin, not at the grieving parents, but at a man leaning against the far wall. Deputy Trent Calloway, a patrol officer in his early 40s, tall and wiry, a narrow face, thin mustache, and hands that suddenly, visibly, began to tremble. The dog wasn't grieving. He was accusing. The entire chapel felt it. Rowan's breath caught like a misfired round. He knew that look from Ridge. He had seen it in war, moments before the dog identified an IED or caught the scent of someone who meant them harm. This wasn't confusion. This was certainty. Trent swallowed hard. "The dog, he's confused," he muttered, voice strained. "He's grieving like the rest of us." No one believed him, not with Ridge's growl vibrating through the room. Luke Bennett stepped toward Rowan, voice cracking. Why is he doing that? Why is he looking at Trent like that?" Rowan had no answer. He was ready to speak aloud. All he knew was that Ridge had never misjudged dissent in his life. Not in war, not in peace, not ever. A dog's grief becomes a warning, Father Emerson. The elderly priest with hazel eyes, worn by decades of comforting the brokenhearted, stepped closer. "Mr. Maddox," he whispered, "animals sense things long before we do. Perhaps he feels something we cannot." A whisper passed through the pews. Several mourners backed away, unsure if they were watching grief or a prophecy. Ridge lowered his head again, nudged Ava's wrist with such tenderness that it broke Hannah Bennett's composure. She collapsed into Luke's arms, sobbing into his chest. "He thinks she needs him," she cried. He thinks she's still calling for him." Rowan felt something cold and electric spread through him. Because Ridge wasn't behaving like a dog saying goodbye. He was behaving like a dog refusing to abandon his post. The accusation no one expected, Alan, the funeral attendant, tall and somber in his black suit, stepped forward cautiously. "Sir," he whispered to Rowan, "we can't let the dog remain in." Ridge snapped his head sharply, growling with a rumble that vibrated through the coffin's wooden frame. Alan stumbled back. "Jesus." Rowan moved closer, lowering himself until he was eye level with Ridge. "Ridge," he murmured, "come on, boy, let's go." But Ridge didn't move. His eyes, dark, intelligent, terrified, shifted again toward Trent. Trent stiffened, and Rowan saw it. Not grief, not shock, but fear. Raw, flickering fear. A kind Rowan recognized from interrogations, from battlefields, from the faces of men who suddenly realized something they'd buried was clawing its way back into the light. The chapel's silence deepened as Ridge's growl grew louder, more insistent. And something inside Rowan Maddox awakened. A Marine's instinct. A survivor's instinct. A man who had lived long enough to know when the world was trying to tell him something. Ridge wasn't just mourning Ava. He was telling Rowan one thing. Ava Rose Bennett did not die the way they said she did. And Ridge, her loyal guardian, her silent friend, refused to let her truth die with her. Rowan Maddox walked out of Willow Creek Chapel with Ridge pressed tight against his leg. The German shepherd's breath coming in sharp, uneven bursts as if something inside him was still fighting its way to the surface. The sun had dipped low behind the pines, painting the parking lot in muted gold. People lingered near their cars, murmuring anxiously. No one had forgotten the sight of Ridge curled around Ava's body, or the way he growled at Deputy Trent Calloway, as if the man were a shadow from a nightmare. Rowan kept walking. The Marine in him needed space to think. Ridge matched his steps, tail low, muscles tense beneath the harness lettered Way 9. Ridge. Rowan instinctively laid a hand on the dog's back. Ridge didn't relax. He only leaned closer. Rowan's mind spiraled. Ridge had years of canine service behind him. Bomb detection, scent tracking, threat recognition. He didn't make mistakes. And he didn't accuse someone without reason, especially not at a child's funeral. A set of hurried footsteps approached from behind. Rowan. He turned. Officer Jamie Brooks, a young patrol cop with short blonde hair and the hopeful eyes of someone who hadn't yet been bent by the system, trotted toward him. Jamie was 28, square-shouldered and athletic, but he carried an earnestness in the way he spoke. Too gentle for a uniform that often demanded hardness, his voice was low, cautious. I saw what happened in there. He glanced at Ridge cautiously. That wasn't normal grief. Rowan didn't answer. Jamie exhaled sharply. Look, man, Trent's been off for weeks, nervous, twitchy. That's not usual for him. He used to be arrogant, sure, but steady. Something's wrong. Rowan studied Jamie carefully. He wasn't used to officers approaching him. Most treated him like a ghost who wandered the outskirts of town. But Jamie's expression held genuine worry, the kind that couldn't be faked. Ridge doesn't react without reason, Rowan finally said. Jamie nodded. Yeah, that's what scares me. Inside the chapel, Ava's parents still clung to each other, and Rowan couldn't bear the thought of how lost they were. But something deeper nagged at him. The way Trent's eyes darted, the tremble in his hands. Rowan's instincts rarely shouted. Tonight, they screamed. Ridge suddenly stopped walking. His ears snapped forward, nose lifting into the air. The dog's entire body straightened, rigid as if detecting a scent no one else could. Rowan stilled. Ridge let out a single, low rumble. And then he pulled, hard. Ridge dragged Rowan across the parking lot, past clusters of shocked mourners, toward the side of the chapel where shadows clung to the brick wall. Rowan braced his boots, but Ridge, a dog built of power and certainty, pulled harder. Jamie rushed behind them. Hey, what's he doing? Ridge stopped at the corner of the building and pressed his nose to the cold concrete. He inhaled once, twice, then looked back at Rowan with pupils blown wide. An unmistakable look of urgency. Rowan crouched beside him. What do you smell, buddy? Ridge pressed his paw to the wall. Claw marks scraped faint, frantic arcs into the brick. Rowan's blood chilled. The marks were fresh. Rowan leaned closer and found something wedged between two bricks. A small, torn piece of glittery pink fabric. Ava's fabric. And next to it, faintly smeared, a single streak of dark grime like someone's dirty glove had scraped the wall while pulling something, or someone, away. Ridge began to whine, a sound so raw and afraid it echoed like a cry from the grave. Rowan's heart dropped. Ava had never reached the parking lot the day she died. She was found on the street. So how did her dress end up here, behind the chapel, hours before the funeral even began? Was someone here, watching, hiding? The funeral wasn't just a farewell. Someone had returned to the scene to remove a trace they never expected a dog to find. Rowan swallowed hard and pocketed the fabric piece. Jamie stared at it with wide eyes. "Rowan, what does that mean?" Rowan didn't answer. Ridge growled softly again, pointing his muzzle toward the tree line behind the chapel as if urging them to follow. But Rowan tightened the leash gently. "Not now, boy." Darkness had begun to pool at the edges of the woods, and he knew better than to chase ghosts into trees without backup. Ridge protested with a sharp huff, but stayed. Jamie rubbed the back of his neck, clearly unsettled. "Look, I shouldn't say this, but Trent filed his patrol route from the day Ava died. Something about it didn't look right. He wasn't supposed to be near her street." Rowan's jaw tightened. "But he was." Jamie nodded. "Yeah, and he didn't report it until hours later. And when he did, it was too clean." Ridge growled at Jamie's last words, as if agreeing. The young officer flinched slightly. "Sorry, Ridge. I didn't mean." But Ridge didn't look offended. He looked afraid. The chapel doors opened again, and Father Emerson stepped out. The elderly priest, thin and hollow-eyed after the emotional service, still carried dignity in the way his black cassock swept the ground. His hazel eyes softened when they fell on Rowan. "Mr. Maddox, is something wrong?" Rowan stood slowly. "Maybe." The priest looked at Ridge, who sat rigid as stone, staring toward the woods. "You know, animals carry memories differently. They don't question what they know. They simply react." Rowan nodded, but his voice tightened. "He's telling me something. I just don't know what yet." Father Emerson sighed deeply. "I saw the way Deputy Calloway reacted. The dog did not misunderstand." Jamie's head snapped toward the priest. "You noticed that too?" Emerson nodded slowly. Fear speaks loudly, even through silence. Ridge suddenly let out a bark, sharp, commanding, stood, body lowered, tail straight, ears locked forward. Rowan spun in the direction Ridge faced. Someone was walking away at the far end of the parking lot. A tall figure, dark jacket, brisk steps, head lowered. Rowan couldn't see the face, but Ridge began barking louder, pulling toward the figure with frantic desperation. Jamie narrowed his eyes. "Is that—" The figure disappeared behind a line of parked cars. Rowan didn't wait. He followed, but by the time they reached the row of vehicles, the figure was gone. Rowan stood in the growing dark, heart pounding. Ridge sniffed the asphalt, then the tires of a nearby SUV. He paced in a circle, confused, whining. Whoever that was, they had been here moments before. Watching the funeral, watching the reactions, watching the dog. Jamie exhaled shakily. Someone's terrified Ridge will find something. Rowan looked toward the tree line again. He didn't like what he was beginning to suspect. Not at all. He tightened Ridge's harness and turned back toward the chapel. "Jamie, whatever happened to Ava, Ridge knows more than we do right now." Jamie nodded. "And if someone's covering something up, they won't stop." "No," Rowan said quietly. "They won't." He led Ridge toward his truck, the old engine clicking faintly as it cooled. Ridge jumped into the passenger seat reserved just for him, but he didn't lie down. He sat tall, staring out the window as if guarding the chapel from whatever evil lurked in its shadows. Jamie lingered beside the door. "Rowan, if you start looking into this, you won't be alone. I'll help. Trent's hiding something. I can feel it. And Ridge, he's telling us something we're not supposed to know." Rowan nodded once. "I know." Ridge let out one more low, mournful whine. Rowan placed a hand on the dog's neck. "We'll find it, buddy. Whatever they did, we'll find it." drove off into the fading light, the funeral now behind them. But the truth, dark, tangled, and dangerous, beginning to unravel. One thing was now unmistakable. Ava Rose Bennett was not only mourned today, she was crying out for justice. And Ridge, the dog who would not leave her side, refused to let her voice fall silent. Morning arrived in Willow Creek with a muted grayness, the kind of light that softened every edge and made even familiar places look worn and quiet. Rowan Maddox felt that heaviness settling inside his chest as he stood at the edge of Birchwood Lane, Ava Rose Bennett's accident site. For a long moment, he simply looked, letting his breath slow, letting the Marine in him assess the ground the way he used to assess foreign streets that pretended to be safe. The asphalt stretched out in a lonely ribbon, cracked, scarred, faded with old chalk lines from the initial investigation. Some marks had dissolved into vague shapes after the recent rain. A child's balloon, shaped like a star, knocked lightly against the Bennett family fence as though trying to rise, but tethered to grief. Rowan's worn Marpat jacket shifted in the wind, but he barely felt the cold. His attention was on Ridge. The German shepherd stood beside him, shoulders taut, nose lifting as if the air itself carried a memory. Ridge's sable black and gray fur shimmered faintly as he breathed in slow, deliberate pulls. He wasn't just sniffing, he was remembering. And Rowan could see it, the moment Ridge slipped from companion to working K9. "Go on, boy," Rowan murmured. "Show me." Ridge lowered his head. His body leaned forward with purpose, tail straight, ears twitching with micro-calculations. He padded along the sidewalk first, the place the official report claimed Ava had darted out from. Rowan followed several steps behind, boots crunching softly. He could feel his pulse rising with each movement Ridge made. And then Ridge stopped. He didn't sit, didn't bark. He did something worse. Ridge stepped backward, then forward, then backward again, repeating the sequence like he was tracing footsteps that once belonged to a child too small to leave deep impressions in the ground. Rowan knelt, palm brushing the worn pavement. Ridge's nose nudged the grass near the curb. "I know," Rowan whispered. "This pattern." She didn't run. She hesitated. That single word, hesitated, cut through him like a blade. A child didn't hesitate unless something made her pause. Speak. Fear. He scanned the road again, this time with purpose. A faint smear on the asphalt caught his eye. Too thin to be a skid, too sharp to be random. Beside it, the dirt along the shoulder was unsettled, like something, or someone, had been dragged. Rowan's stomach tightened. Ridge stepped away from the curb suddenly and pressed his nose to a patch of earth just inside the Bennett's fence line. The dog's breath quickened. His eyes swept up to Rowan with a message so clear it didn't need human translation. "She was here first," Rowan murmured. Then moved, or taken. A heaviness pressed against his ribs. The Marine had learned to read scenes like stories carved into dirt. And this one didn't read like a tragic accident. It read like interference. And interference always meant intent. Rowan drove Ridge to the county medical examiner's office. The small brick building looked unassuming, almost too quiet for the weight it carried inside. The fluorescent lights hummed faintly overhead as Rowan entered the autopsy wing. Standing at the doorway was Dr. Maya Collins, her posture straight, her expression as sharp as a scalpel. She looked to be mid-30s, hair twisted loosely in a bun, wisps escaping like they refused to be contained. She wore a gray sweater beneath her lab coat, sleeves rolled slightly, her fingers ink-stained from note-taking. Maya's eyes, deep brown, intelligent, tired, studied Rowan with the wariness of someone used to fighting quiet battles from behind paperwork. "You must be Maddox," she said, arms folding. "The Marine with the dog who overturned a funeral." Rowan couldn't tell if her tone held judgment or reluctant respect. "If that's my reputation now," he said, "I hope it's useful." Her gaze dropped to Ridge, who stood tall, alert, tail still. "He's the one who climbed into the coffin, isn't he?" "Yes," Rowan said softly. "And he's the reason I'm here." Maya nodded once. "Come with me." The autopsy room carried a coldness that clung to the skin. Stainless steel counters, harsh lighting, everything sterile except for the unspoken grief that lived in every corner. Maya opened a thin folder on the examination table. Rowan recognized the forms instantly. Impact analysis, trauma classification, diagrams of a 5-year-old child's final injuries. Maya's voice softened. "I performed Ava's autopsy, and I signed off on the official cause of death, vehicular impact." She paused. "But there were things I questioned." She showed him the first photo, tiny arms with faint oval bruises. "These aren't fall bruises," she said. "They're grab marks, adult hand size." Another photo, the side of Ava's neck. "Petechial hemorrhaging, suggests pressure to the face or mouth before impact. But I was told, explicitly, that these details weren't relevant." Rowan's gaze sharpened. "Told by who?" Maya looked toward the hallway. "Someone above patrol level." Her meaning wasn't vague. It was a red flare in a fog of lies. Ridge suddenly stood, his ears pricked sharply, his nose lifted toward a nearby cabinet labeled "Personal Effects." Maya blinked. "Your dog is very sure of something." Ridge let out a small bark, soft, emotional. "May I look?" Rowan asked. "If he asks," Maya said, "we listen." She opened the cabinet. Ridge stepped forward and pressed his nose to a sealed plastic bag containing Ava's pink, glittery dress. His breath hitched in a trembling whine, quiet, pained, remembering. Maya turned the garment over in her hands. A tear cut along the side seam. "This," she whispered, "wasn't caused by a car. It's clean, straight, like something pulled the dress hard from one side." Rowan said nothing. Couldn't. The weight in his chest was too tight. Then everything in the room shifted. Ridge backed away suddenly, not out of fear, but out of recognition. His body trembled, breath quivering. Then he growled. Not toward Maya, not toward Rowan, but toward the dress itself. As if buried deep in the fibers was the scent of someone who was never supposed to touch Ava. Rowan felt it like a punch. To Ridge, this wasn't evidence. It was the last thing the child he loved had worn, and the last trace of whoever had hurt her. A battlefield doesn't need bullets to be real. Sometimes it's made of fabric and bruises and silence forced into a report. Maya sealed the bag again, hands shaking slightly. "If I reopen this case formally," she whispered, "I'll need more than instincts. I'll need something airtight." "Then we'll find it," Rowan said. He told her about the scene, the path Ridge traced, the tire angle, the disturbed dirt, the torn scrap of glittery fabric found behind the chapel. Piece by piece, Maya listened, her jaw tightening. "So she was moved," Maya concluded. "Handled, staged. That's what it looks like. And the funeral." Maya hesitated. Someone went back to clean evidence. Someone who didn't expect a dog's memory to outlast their lies. Ridge sat between them, chest rising and falling, the picture of a soldier ready to continue a war only he understood. Outside, the day had dimmed, the sky carrying a muted sheen. But the parking lot wasn't empty. A figure leaned against a patrol SUV, Deputy Trent Calloway. He straightened sharply when Rowan stepped out. his thin mustache twitching over a tense jaw. His uniform was neat, but the restless tapping at his belt betrayed his nerves. "Maddox," Trent forced a smile. "Funny seeing you here." Ridge moved first. A step forward, then another. Shoulders squared, head lowered, a steady, rumbling growl. Trent swallowed hard. "Look," he muttered, eyes darting. "You don't know what you're sticking your nose into." "Then tell me," Rowan said. "Who is this really about?" Before Trent could answer, a shadow elongated across the pavement. Chief Robert Kane approached. Tall, composed. His gray hair cut short, jaw clean, uniform immaculate. Eyes cold enough to freeze a confession midair. "Mr. Maddox," Kane said smoothly, "we need to talk." He dismissed Trent with a tilt of his head. The deputy fled like a guilty man escaping a confession he wasn't ready to make. Kane's smile held no warmth. "Marine to Marine," Kane said softly, stepping close. "Some battles aren't yours. Learn when to walk away." Rowan didn't blink. "And some children deserve someone who won't." A flicker passed behind Kane's eyes. Annoyance, calculation. "Careful," Kane murmured. "Justice can shoot back." Walked away. Ridge watched him until he vanished. Rowan rested a hand on Ridge's neck. The dog leaned in, steady, resolved. "All right, buddy," Rowan whispered. "If they're trying this hard to bury it, we dig deeper." And together, they turned toward the truck, toward the truth waiting in the shadows. Rowan Maddox didn't drive straight home after leaving the medical examiner's parking lot. For several minutes, he simply sat behind the wheel, hands gripping the steering wheel, watching Ridge through the corner of his eye. The German shepherd hadn't taken his gaze off the road where Chief Kane had disappeared. Ears still perked, chest still tight, as if the man's scent lingered in the air like smoke. Rowan finally exhaled and reached across to scratch behind Ridge's ear. "You saw something in him," he murmured. "Or smelled something. Something we're not supposed to know yet." Ridge leaned into the touch, but his eyes didn't soften. They held a sharp watchfulness Rowan had seen only during operations overseas, moments before a door breach or an ambush or a truth rising from a place it had been buried. The truck rolled forward. Rowan wasn't ready to return to the quiet of his cabin. Not yet. Quiet meant thinking, and thinking meant replaying every detail in the morgue until the pictures etched themselves into his skull. Instead, Rowan drove to the last place Ava Bennett had been seen alive by anyone other than her parents. The Bennett house. The white picket fence didn't look as bright as it had during the funeral slideshow. Sunlight cast long shadows across the yard. The porch light, still wrapped in pink ribbon for Ava's 5th birthday, flickered faintly. Rowan parked under a maple tree and stepped out slowly, Ridge landing beside him with a soft thud. He didn't need to knock. Hannah Bennett opened the door with a haunted expression that suggested she hadn't slept more than an hour. Her hair, chestnut brown and usually worn loose, was tied in a shaky bun. Dark circles clung beneath her eyes. She was small in build, maybe early 30s, delicate features but currently swallowed by grief, her blue sweater hanging slightly off one shoulder. She clutched a tissue too tightly, as if it were the only fragile thing she could still control. "Mr. Maddox," she whispered. "You came back?" Rowan nodded. "Only if you're all right with it." She stepped aside. "Please." The living room was warm in color. Soft yellows, framed drawings, a little bookshelf with Ava's favorite picture books. It felt like a place meant for laughter. But now it was a shrine to silence. Ridge walked slowly, head lowered, almost reverently, sniffing the air as if Ava's presence still whispered from the walls. Hannah watched the dog with trembling hands. She loved him, she murmured. Every Tuesday she'd sit by the window waiting for him. Said he was her big furry friend. Rowan's throat tightened. He didn't want to cause her more pain. But the truth, Ava's truth, mattered too much to ignore. "Hannah," he said gently, "I need to ask you about something unusual." Her shoulders tensed, but she nodded. Rowan pulled the small piece of glittery fabric from his pocket. The one Ridge found behind the chapel wall. Hannah's breath hitched. She pressed a hand to her mouth. That's from her dress," she whispered. "Do you remember how it tore?" Rowan asked softly. "It didn't tear," Hannah said, shaking her head. "The dress was new. I tied the bow myself. It was perfect when she went outside." Rowan let the weight of the truth sink in, for both of them. Before he could say more, Ridge suddenly stiffened. His ears snapped forward, his tail lowered. His entire posture changed to warning. Rowan turned. The front doorknob rattled. A faint shadow slipped past the frosted glass panel. One step, then another. Ridge emitted a low, primal growl, unlike anything Rowan had heard from him since the battlefield. Hannah gasped and stepped backward, clutching herself as if instinctively shielding where her child should have been. Rowan stepped in front of her. The door creaked open. Only an envelope slid inside. No footsteps running away. No car. No sound. Just an envelope. Thin, white, marked with nothing but a single smudge of dirt on the corner. Rowan approached slowly, scooped it up, and felt something stiff inside. "Who would?" Hannah whispered. "Someone who didn't want to be seen." Rowan opened it. Inside was a photo. A blurry image taken from a distance. Ava holding a small stuffed bear, walking toward the side of the house on the morning she died. Rowan's breath froze, because standing behind her, barely visible through trees, was a second figure. Tall, broad shoulders, wearing a jacket Rowan recognized immediately. It was the same jacket Chief Kane had been wearing earlier that day. Rowan's jaw locked. Hannah's knees buckled, and she grabbed the back of a chair. What is that? Is that him? Was someone watching her? Rowan didn't answer because he couldn't. Not yet. Not without understanding what the photo meant. The angle, the distance, the timing. But one truth rose sharply in his mind. Someone knew Kane was involved, and someone wanted Rowan to see it. Rowan tucked the photo away and guided Hannah gently to the couch. "I need you to stay inside. Lock the doors. Don't answer to anyone unless you hear my voice." Hannah nodded, tears streaming silently. "Mr. Maddox, please bring justice for her." Ridge rested his chin on her knee. A soft, mournful sound escaped the dog, almost like an apology. When Rowan and Ridge stepped outside again, the wind had picked up. Leaves skittered across the pavement, and the shadows around the trees felt deeper than they should. Rowan scanned the street. No footprints, no vehicle tracks. Whoever delivered the picture was either fast or familiar with disappearing. He headed back to the truck. But someone else had already beaten him there. Deputy Trent Calloway leaned against the passenger side, arms crossed, face pale. The thin mustache above his lip twitched in agitation. His sandy blonde hair looked damp with sweat, though the air was cool. His usual arrogance was gone, replaced by something close to fear. "You shouldn't be here, Maddox," Trent said. This is getting too big." Ridge trotted forward, planting himself squarely between Rowan and Trent. His hackles rose, lips curling slightly. The growl was soft but unmistakable. Trent raised his hands quickly. All right, easy. I'm not here to start anything. You sure? Rowan asked, voice low. Trent swallowed. Look, I didn't know what I was signing off on, I swear. The reports, the angles, the timing. Kane told me what to write. And you listened? Rowan's eyes sharpened. What was I supposed to do? Trent snapped, then dropped his voice. You don't say no to him. The man has half the department in his pocket, and the other half terrified. Ridge took a step closer, growl deepening. Trent flinched. Rowan folded his arms. Then why talk to me now? Trent rubbed his face shakily. Because I think he's going to pin this on me to save himself. And if he does, he gestured vaguely downward. I'm dead, Maddox. One way or another. Rowan didn't respond. The silence made Trent's voice quiver. They're watching the Bennett house, Maddox. They know you're digging around. They? Rowan asked. Trent hesitated. Sweat dripped down his temple. Chief Kane, he whispered. And someone above him. Someone he answers to. Rowan's chest tightened. Who? Before Trent could answer, the crack of a twig snapped from the woods behind the Bennett house. Ridge spun instantly, barking once, sharp and piercing. A figure moved through the trees, dark clothing, quick steps, vanishing deeper before Rowan could catch more than a silhouette. Trent paled. They followed me, he breathed. Oh God, they followed me. Rowan put a firm hand on Ridge's harness. Stay behind me. But Ridge pulled forward, nose high, muscles tense, as if the air carried a scent he'd been waiting for. Get in the truck, Rowan told Trent. I can't go back to the station, Trent stammered. Kane will. No one's taking you to the station, Rowan said. But you're not staying here either. They loaded Trent into the back seat. Ridge sat at Rowan's side, staring into the woods as if daring the shadows to move again. Rowan started the engine and drove away from the Bennett home, a knot tightening in his stomach. Whoever delivered that envelope, whoever watched Ava, whoever followed Trent, they weren't hiding anymore. They were moving. And Ridge, his fur still bristling, knew it too. Rowan Maddox kept his truck steady on the narrow forest road, eyes shifting between the darkening tree line and the reflection of Trent Calloway, trembling in the back seat. The deputy looked different now. Nothing like the smirking officer he'd been at the funeral. His sandy blonde hair clung to his forehead with sweat, and his thin mustache twitched each time Ridge turned his amber gaze toward him. Under the dim light, the man's freckles seemed sharper, more uneven across his pale skin, as if fear had pulled his features tighter. Ridge sat tall beside Rowan, front paws braced firmly on the seat, muscles coiled. His sable black and gray fur rippled each time he breathed sharply through his nose. He was tracing scents that still clung to Trent. Scents Rowan didn't yet understand. The dog's presence loomed like a silent oath. Whatever happened next, Ridge was ready. We're going somewhere safe, Rowan said, voice low. But you need to tell me everything. No more half-truths. Trent swallowed so hard Rowan could hear it. I told you Kane forced me. You told me pieces, Rowan said. Now I want the whole thing. The truck reached Rowan's cabin, isolated, framed by tall pines that swayed like watchmen in the fading dusk. The porch lights flicked on automatically as Rowan parked beside the split-rail fence. Ridge hopped out first, nose to the wind, ears twitching. He scanned the tree line, posture tight. Something in the air unsettled him. Rowan placed a hand on Ridge's back. Inside, he ordered softly. Ridge obeyed, but not without glancing back once, toward the woods, like he expected the shadows to peel apart and reveal whoever had been following earlier. Inside, The cabin held warmth and order. Neatly stacked firewood, maps pinned on the wall, old marine medals carefully set beside photos of Rowan's former unit. Trent sat stiffly on the edge of a wooden chair, fingers tapping uncontrollably on his knee. Rowan tossed him a water bottle. "Start talking." Trent hesitated, eyes darting toward Ridge, who lay by the door with his head resting on his paws, watching Trent without blinking. "Okay. Okay," Trent finally breathed. "It started months ago. Kane. He took over the investigation unit quietly, moved people around, anyone who asked questions got reassigned. Or worse." "Worse how?" Trent lowered his voice. "There was this detective, Mark Dwyer, older guy, gray beard, slow-moving but sharp. He noticed the same things you did today, inconsistencies. He pushed. And then, one morning he didn't show up to work. Official story said he retired early to help his sister out of state." Trent shook his head violently. "I saw him 2 days before that. He told me he felt watched. He told me he had evidence Kane didn't want found." Rowan felt the words hit him like cold rain. "What kind of evidence?" "I don't know," Trent whispered. "I swear." But whatever it was, it scared him. Ridge's tail lifted slightly off the floor. His ears perked. Something about Dwyer mattered. Rowan leaned closer. "Why drag Ava into this?" Trent's eyes welled. "I don't know if she was the target, or just saw something she shouldn't have. But Kane, he made it disappear. He ordered her case to be written off fast. I thought it was just pressure at first. But then, he stopped, completely frozen. Not from fear, from Ridge." The dog suddenly rose, nose flaring, body drifting toward the window. His muscles turned rigid, his hackles rising like storm waves. "What is it, boy?" Rowan murmured. Ridge's head tilted once. Then he growled. Low, warning, unmistakable. Rowan moved quickly, stepping to the window, just as headlights flared through the trees. A vehicle, a dark SUV, pulling slowly into the dirt clearing in front of the cabin. Rowan cursed under his breath. Trent nearly fell out of his chair. "That's Kane's car," Trent whispered, voice cracking. But Rowan shook his head. "No. Kane drives a gray Crown Vic. This is someone else." The engine cut off. A door slammed. Footsteps approached. Ridge planted himself between Rowan and the door, snarling low enough to vibrate the floorboards. Rowan reached for the handle of a locked drawer where he kept a sidearm, but halted when a voice called out, "Maddox, it's Maya. Let me in." Rowan exhaled sharply. Relief, confusion, and tension tangled together. He opened the door. There stood Dr. Maya Collins, coat still on, face flushed from cold and urgency. Her dark hair had escaped its bun, framing her sharp cheekbones. She held a folder close to her chest, knuckles white. Her eyes, usually controlled, were burning with something close to panic. "I didn't know where else to go," she said. "I need to show you something." Rowan stepped aside, letting her in. Ridge immediately relaxed, tail lowering slightly as he sniffed her clothes in recognition. Maya glanced at Trent. "You?" Trent winced. "Dr. Collins." "You were supposed to uphold evidence, not bury it," she said sharply. Trent sagged in shame. But Maya didn't linger on him. She set the folder on Rowan's table and spread out several printed screenshots. Surveillance stills, timestamps, coroner adjustments, and one photo Rowan hadn't seen before. A tire tread. Partial, but clear. "This was on Ava's shoe," Maya said. "Hidden under the laces. Someone pressed her foot against the tire after she was already unconscious." Rowan felt his lungs seize. "So it wasn't just staged," he said. "It was manufactured." Maya nodded grimly. The tread pattern doesn't match the car in the official report, and I finally tracked where I'd seen it. She pushed forward another image, a different vehicle, a black SUV, exactly like the one parked outside the cabin. Rowan and Trent stared at her, Maya's voice lowered to a whisper. That tread belongs to a government-issued tactical vehicle. Not municipal, not police, federal. Trent paled. You mean? Yes, Maya said. Whoever killed Ava didn't just work above Chief Kane. They worked above all of us. Ridge whined sharply, high, distressed, as he pawed at one of the photos. Then he looked up at Rowan, ears trembling, as if begging him to understand something deeper, something he couldn't articulate. Ridge pressed both paws onto the last photo, one Rowan hadn't picked up yet. A photo Maya hadn't explained. It showed a patch of forest soil, faint prints, small, child-sized. But beside them, impossibly, was a second impression, a wide partial shoe print, someone adult. But it didn't end there. The soil showed drag marks, as if Ava had been pulled, and then placed deliberately in the road. Ridge let out a soft, broken sound, half whine, half plea. Not for justice, for memory. Rowan felt his chest tighten painfully. This wasn't just a cover-up. It wasn't just corruption. Ava Rose Bennett was taken, moved, used to hide something else. And now everyone who knew, even a little, was in the line of fire. Rowan straightened slowly. Who else knows about this? Maya shook her head. No one. I didn't even log these findings. If I had, they'd already be erased. Trent trembled. They followed me here. If they know I talked, Maddox, I'm dead. Ridge gave a short bark, sharp, decisive. Rowan understood his meaning instantly. Trent wasn't safe. None of them were. He turned to Maya. Why bring this to me? Because you're the only one Kane doesn't control, she said. And because your dog sees things even our instruments missed. Rowan didn't smile. Couldn't. The weight inside him was too heavy. The cabin lights flickered. Once. Twice. Then died. Darkness swallowed the room. Trent screamed. Maya gasped. Ridge lunged toward the window, growling fiercely. Outside, engines. Multiple. Rolling slowly toward the cabin like predators closing in. Rowan whispered to Ridge, Stay close, buddy. It's starting. The darkness that swallowed Rowan Maddox's cabin was absolute. Thick, humming, almost alive. For a moment, no one breathed. Trent froze on the edge of his chair, eyes wide and unblinking, while Maya Collins instinctively backed toward the wall, her fingers gripping the edge of the table. The faint metallic click of her bracelet sounded like a gunshot in the quiet. Ridge stood first. He didn't bark. He didn't growl. He simply rose, every muscle braced, tail stiff, ears locked forward. The faint moonlight from the window caught the outline of his sable black and gray fur, turning it into a row of sharp ridges along his spine. His breath came slow, controlled. This was the stance of a dog preparing to defend, not react. Rowan moved next. Years of combat deployments returned to him instantly. Adrenaline flushed through his veins like a silent alarm. He crouched near the window, peering toward the faint silhouettes outside the cabin. 3 vehicles, one still idling, 2 parked at angles meant to block escape. Federal plates, Maya whispered. I've seen those before, in evidence transfers. Trent's voice cracked. Oh God, they came for us. Rowan stayed calm. They came for the evidence. It was the truth that settled everything. Evidence meant motive. Motive meant fear. And people who feared exposure were always the most dangerous. He motioned for everyone to stay low and reach the cabinet near the fireplace. The hinges groaned faintly as he opened it. Inside were 3 old tactical flashlights, a worn emergency radio, and a multi-purpose crowbar. Rowan handed a flashlight to Maya, one to Trent. "Stay behind Ridge," Rowan said. "He'll know what's coming before we do." Ridge's rumbling growl deepened, vibrating across the wooden floorboards. He moved closer to the door, nose brushing the old rug, tail low. He was tracking movement, slow, deliberate footsteps circling the cabin. A knock echoed through the stillness. But it wasn't loud. It wasn't aggressive. It was soft. 3 calm taps. That was what made it terrifying. Rowan signaled silence with a raised palm. No one in the cabin dared move. The knocking repeated, this time closer to the window. A shadow passed beyond the frosted glass. Broader than Trent, taller than Rowan, posture rigid, almost military. For a moment, Rowan thought it could be Chief Kane, but the outline wasn't his. This man's gait was too measured, too precise. Maya whispered, "Someone new." Rowan nodded. "Someone higher." Another knock, harder, shook the door. "Mr. Maddox?" a voice called, low and chillingly steady. "We need to have a conversation." It wasn't a shout. It wasn't a threat. It was the voice of someone who expected obedience. Trent shrank back. That's him. That's the one Kane answers to. Rowan steadied his breathing. "Name?" "I don't know," Trent whispered. "Kane just called him Director." The man outside knocked once more. "Let's not make this difficult. You have materials that don't belong to you." Ridge bared his teeth. Rowan's mind raced. Maya's evidence folder sat on the table. Photos, tire treads, timestamps. Whoever stood outside wasn't here to talk. He was here to erase. Rowan turned to Maya. "There's a back window above the sink. It leads to the old storage crawl space. It's narrow, but you can fit. Trent goes with you. Ridge and I hold them off." Maya's eyes widened. "Rowan, move," he said softly. "You're the only one who can tell Ava's story with proof." Trent didn't argue. He scrambled toward the kitchen. Ridge didn't follow them. He stayed by Rowan's side, gaze locked on the door with unwavering focus. Another knock, hard. "Mr. Maddox, last chance." Rowan didn't answer. Instead, he reached for the crowbar and slipped to the side of the window. The door handle twisted slowly. Someone was testing the lock. The cabin's old frame creaked. Ridge barked, once explosive and commanding. The door stopped. Then footsteps moved around the porch. Soft thuds. Controlled breathing. Movements too synchronized to belong to local officers. Rowan finally glimpsed one of them through the window. A man in his late 40s, tall, lean, wearing a dark tactical jacket with no insignia. His hair was a mix of black and iron gray, cut short. His jaw was sharp and clean-shaven, eyes narrow and unnervingly calm, despite the tension of the scene. He scanned the cabin like he already knew every exit. There was no kindness in his expression. No humanity either. Only purpose. A second man joined him. Shorter, heavier build, shaved head, wearing black gloves. His stance was rigid, suggesting military training. 2 more shadows lingered near the SUV, holding something long, flashlights or rifles. Rowan whispered, "Federal contractors, private sector, the kind that doesn't file reports." Ridge growled louder. Just as Rowan prepared to move, Ridge suddenly froze. His ears shot upward, his nose lifted sharply. Then, without warning, Ridge pressed his head firmly into Rowan's thigh, hard enough to force Rowan back a step. Not fear, not hesitation. A signal, a warning only Ridge understood. And then Rowan heard it too. Distant, soft, coming from behind the cabin. Another engine, another vehicle. Someone else was coming. But whether they were friend or enemy, Ridge's trembling posture didn't say. Only that everything was about to break open. Rowan tightened his grip on the crowbar. "Stay low," he murmured to Ridge. "If they breach, go for the arm first." But the men outside didn't try to break in. They moved toward the back of the cabin, right where Maya and Trent were climbing through the crawlspace exit. Rowan cursed under his breath and sprinted for the kitchen. Ridge vaulted ahead of him, leaping over a chair and sliding across the linoleum floor with claws scraping for traction. When Rowan reached the window, it was too late. The tall, gray-haired man stood 10 yards away, flashlight aimed straight at Maya. She froze midway through the crawlspace opening, hair disheveled, face pale. Trent cowered behind her. The man's voice was steady. "Step out, Dr. Collins." Maya shook her head, gripping her folder tight. "You can't bury this." "You misunderstand," the man said calmly. "We're not burying anything. We're removing loose ends." Ridge's snarl shook the walls. Before Rowan could act, one of the other men swung his flashlight toward the dog. Ridge reacted instantly, hurling himself out the open window with a force Rowan hadn't seen since deployment. The dog hit the ground running. The men staggered back, startled, raising their arms. Rowan followed, landing heavily beside Ridge. The night erupted into chaos. The heavy-built contractor lunged at Rowan, attempting to pin him. But Rowan's marine reflexes kicked in. He dodged left, grabbed the man's arm, and slammed him into the cabin wall. Ridge leaped, jaws locking onto the man's forearm. The man screamed, dropping his weapon. The tall, gray-haired director remained hauntingly calm, stepping back to avoid the struggle. His eyes flicked to Maya, not Rowan, not Ridge, Maya. He raised a hand, a silent signal. One of his men moved toward her. Rowan tried to intervene, but another attacker blocked him. Ridge tore free and lunged again, forcing the attacker off balance. Maya clutched the folder tighter and bolted toward the tree line. "Run!" Rowan shouted. "Don't stop!" Trent scrambled after her. The director didn't chase. He turned his gaze back to Rowan, cold, assured, calculating. "You're making this harder than it needs to be," he said. "Hand over the evidence, and this ends." Rowan wiped blood from his lip. Not for Ava. The director's jaw flexed. A child who saw something she shouldn't have. Nothing more. Ridge growled so viciously the pine needles trembled underfoot. Rowan stepped forward. "You tell yourself that to sleep at night?" "I sleep fine," the director said, "because men like you don't scare me." He motioned sharply, and the men regrouped with unsettling discipline. But before they could advance, the distant rumble of the second engine grew louder. Headlights burst through the trees, illuminating the director's men. For the first time, the director's expression changed. He turned his head, just slightly. But enough for Rowan to see something he'd never expected. Nervousness. Whoever was arriving wasn't with him. The director stepped back. "We're done for tonight." He retreated toward the SUV, motioning his men to withdraw. Within seconds, the tactical vehicles reversed down the dirt path, disappearing between the trees. Rowan stood breathing hard, Ridge beside him panting with feral intensity. The second vehicle came to a stop. The door swung open. Someone stepped out. A figure Rowan hadn't seen since his last deployment. The headlights carved a sharp path through the trees, scattering beams of white across Rowan Maddox's muddy clearing. Ridge pressed closer to Rowan's leg, panting softly. Not from fear, but from anticipation. His ears pricked, his gaze locked on the approaching silhouette as the truck engine rumbled into silence. For a long moment, no one moved. Even the forest, shaken moments earlier by the retreat of the director's men, now held its breath. The driver's door opened. A tall man stepped out slowly, as if weighing every inch of ground he touched. He was in his early 40s, maybe mid-40s at most, but fatigue had carved faint shadows beneath his eyes. His frame was athletic, built through years of hard training, but softened slightly by time. His hair was dark, trimmed short on the sides, with a streak of white above his right temple. A faint scar cut from the corner of his eyebrow toward his cheek, just shallow enough to remain subtle, but deep enough to prove he had lived a dangerous life. And Rowan knew that scar. "Marcus Hale," Rowan breathed. The man paused at the sound of his name, then offered a tired half-smile. "Didn't expect you to recognize me in this lighting." Rowan stepped forward, stunned. "I thought you were dead. Afghanistan. The blast—" "It was easier to let you think so," Marcus replied quietly. Ridge growled low, uncertain. Marcus held out a steady hand, palm open, letting the dog scent him. "Still got a ghost of a memory, huh, boy? You always were the smart one." Ridge's tail lowered but did not wag. He didn't trust easily anymore, not after the night Ava was taken. Rowan placed a calming hand on Ridge's back, but even he couldn't shake the strange tension pressing into his ribs. "What are you doing here?" Rowan asked. "And why now?" Marcus exhaled sharply. "Because you're in more danger than you realize. And because everything that's happening, Ava, Chief Kane, the director, it's all connected. You just don't see the whole field yet." Rowan stiffened. "You know about the director?" Marcus nodded once. "I know who he works for." Maya and Trent emerged from the tree line at that moment, breathless and shaken, but safe. Maya clutched the folder against her chest like a survival rope. Her brown hair was tangled, her coat scraped by branches, yet her eyes stayed sharp, fiercely protective of the truth she carried. When she saw Marcus, she froze. Who is he?" "Someone I used to serve with," Rowan said, "years ago." Marcus offered a courteous nod. "Ma'am, and you must be Trent Hughes." His gaze softened slightly. "You made the right call going to Rowan. He's the only one who wouldn't trade your safety for convenience." Trent swallowed, unnerved but grateful. Marcus stepped closer, lowering his voice. "We don't have much time. The director won't make the same mistake twice. You need to know what you're up against." Just as Marcus spoke, Ridge suddenly whipped his head toward the northern tree line. His entire posture changed, not defensive, not fearful, alert. He stepped forward, nose lifting, pupils narrowing on something only he sensed. A breeze swept through the clearing, rustling pine needles, and carrying a scent Rowan couldn't detect, but Ridge instantly recognized. A soft whine escaped the dog's throat. Rowan's skin prickled. Ridge only made that sound when something dangerous, something familiar and dangerous, was near. Marcus's expression shifted. "He's smelling them already, isn't he?" "Who?" Rowan demanded. "The director's backup team," Marcus said. "They never send just one squad." The forest seemed to inhale around them. Marcus motioned toward his truck. "We need to move. If we stay here, they'll box us in." Rowan hesitated. "We can't just run. Maya has evidence, proof. We need someplace secure." "I've got one," Marcus said. "Off-grid. Canyon Point. No signals in or out. They won't find us before we find answers." Maya tightened her grip on the folder. "What are the answers? Why was Ava targeted? Why did Chief Kane lie about the accident?" Marcus hesitated, shadows crossing his face. "Because Ava saw the wrong man at the wrong time, and Kane was ordered to clean up the mess." "By the director?" Rowan asked. Marcus shook his head slowly. "No. The director is middle tier, a handler. The real power sits above him. Someone with reach, influence, and a long memory. He met Rowan's eyes. Someone who knows you. Rowan froze. Knows me? Knows what you can do? Marcus said. Knows your skills, your instincts, your moral line. That scares him more than anything. Before Rowan could demand more, Ridge barked sharply. 2 barks in rapid succession. Movement. Rowan reached for the flashlight, scanning the edge of the forest. We need to leave, now. Marcus nodded. Load up. But Maya didn't move. Her gaze fixed on the far tree line, the same direction Ridge glared at. Her lips trembled. He's out there, isn't he? The director? No, Marcus said. Someone worse. They piled into the truck, Rowan, Maya, Trent in the back. Marcus driving, Ridge leaping in last. Gravel spit behind the tires as Marcus took off down the forest road. Branches slapped the sides of the vehicle, headlights carving frantic shapes through the dark. Inside the cab, the tension tightened like wire. Rowan leaned forward. Tell me everything. Marcus kept his eyes on the road. After the blast in Afghanistan, I wasn't dead. I was recruited. By who? By a classified domestic intelligence task force. No insignia, no oversight, unlimited reach. I spent years doing things I'm not proud of. Surveillance, retrieval, containment. His jaw tightened. One of the men running it was Avery Locke. The name hit Rowan like a blow. Avery Locke, Rowan repeated. Former military intelligence. Disappeared 10 years ago. He didn't disappear, Marcus said. He went underground, and he built a network through law enforcement, federal contracts, even private units. And the director works for him, Rowan said. And Kane, Marcus added. They're all tied in, covering hits, controlling witnesses, silencing loose ends. Trent swallowed hard. And Ava was a loose end? Marcus's knuckles whitened on the steering wheel. Avery Locke has one weakness. Children, not compassion, control. Any child who sees something compromising becomes a liability. Ava saw Locke leaving an unmarked vehicle behind Kane's office. She saw a man she wasn't supposed to see. Rowan felt his blood boil. So they tried to eliminate her. Marcus nodded. And Kane helped bury it. Ridge let out another low growl from the back seat, eyes fixed on the rear window. Rowan turned, and his pulse spiked. A pair of headlights, growing brighter, closer. They're following us, Maya whispered. No, Marcus murmured. They're hunting us. The truck lurched as Marcus took a hard turn down a dirt trail leading to Canyon Point. Rowan braced his hand against the window frame. Trent held onto the seat with white knuckles. Ridge barked once, sharp and commanding, his body tense, ready to spring. Marcus shouted, "Hold on!" The truck slid across loose rock, fishtailing before Marcus regained control. The pursuing vehicle stayed close, too close. They know this terrain, Rowan said. Of course they do, Marcus replied. Locke's trained them. Another sharp turn, a ridge of stone, a narrow pass. Marcus accelerated. The headlights behind them surged closer, their beams slicing across the truck interior like a blade. They're going to ram us, Maya cried. Not if Ridge and I say otherwise, Rowan muttered. Marcus's voice hardened. Rowan, if Locke really wants Ava gone, this won't end until he's exposed. Tonight was just the opening move. The pursuing vehicle swung left, preparing to strike the truck's rear quarter panel. Ridge's bark tore through the cab, loud, sudden, instinctive. Rowan whipped around and saw the impossible. The man in the passenger seat of the pursuing SUV leaned forward into the light, and it wasn't the director. It was Chief Kane. his face twisted with fury. His hand reached for something metal. Rowan swore under his breath. "He's not done. He wants Maya." Marcus didn't flinch. "Then we finish this." The SUV lunged. Marcus jerked the wheel, the world pitched sideways, and the truck shot into the darkness of Canyon Point. Sometimes the world reminds us that miracles do not always arrive with thunder or blinding light. Sometimes they come quietly, through a loyal dog who refuses to give up, through a stranger who chooses courage over silence, or through the unexpected strength hidden inside a child who refuses to stop fighting. These moments are not accidents. They are reminders that God still moves gently through the lives of ordinary people, guiding, protecting, and restoring what darkness tries to steal. As you go back to your own daily battles, your work, your family, your struggles, your private storms, remember this: you are never as alone as you think. Grace often steps in when hope feels lost, and sometimes the smallest breath of faith can shift the course of a life. Hold on to that. Carry it with you. And when you see someone hurting, be the light that God may be trying to send their way. If this story touched your heart, please share it so it can reach someone who may need it tonight. Leave a comment and tell us what part stayed with you the most. And make sure to subscribe to the channel so you never miss the stories of courage, redemption, and the quiet miracles that still walk among us. May God bless you, protect your home, and keep peace in your heart until we meet again in the next story.